Good morning and welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Justice Beat Talk Show. Today's topic is law enforcement duality. Who are you bringing to work every day? Today our guests, Dr. Odell Johnson and Sir Irvin Williams, share their perspective on African-American encounters with the police, examine the resulting trauma of these lived experiences, and discuss potential solutions to working through the residue of trauma.
We are not monolithic creatures. We are more than that. We are transverse and unapologetically fearless. We come in all shapes, faces, and forms. We disguise the God in us well. We are brilliant beyond measures. We are not the media influence. We are not the problem. We are the experiment. We are Dr. Frankenstein's monster, and we developed our own consciousness. We are the rebels, the thugs, the inadequate adequacies that plague the community. We are America's horrible mutation staring in the mirror, watching our own destruction, watching them imitate our righteousness, watching them believe that their apologies are acceptable. They are not. We are the animal, the beast, the cage, the illusion of the illusion, the oppressor and the oppressed. We believe the lies that were told, sold, and forced upon us. We can't be real. We're not only magic, we are the creator of dust. We are the writers of our tomorrow. We are the fingertips of excellence. We are the dancing grace, the step and the beat. We are beautiful music, matriculating melodies of rhythm. We are them. We are the movers and the shakers. We are the sun and the giver of light and life. We smile, we laugh, we sing, we rejoice in our melanin. We are spots of pigmentation in America's voice. The earth shakes when we speak. We are curious creators of excellence. We are the victim and the verdict, the prosecutor and the prosecuted. We are the hands up, don't shoot, and the I can't breathe through America's injustice. We are the ends of protest and the change. We are change. We are bold. We are bold. We are untouchable, unmatchable, unimaginable, unobtainable. We are the opposite of negative. We are the atoms. We make up everything in reality. We are the composer of our intellect, the speakers of our own speeches. We are men, we are fathers, uncles, sons, lovers, and husbands and partners. We are fighters, dreamers of radical abbreviations of society, the African and American. We are teachers, architects, scientists, doctors, lawyers. We are the narrative of our own virtue. We are visceral. We are visceral, impactfully impacting this chapter we call the future. We are the story waiting to be written, the authors of nonfiction. We are baby boomers, millennials, Generation X, Y, and Z. We are Alpha and Omega and everything in between. We are God-fearing gods. We are our grandfather's prayers answered. We are important. We are valued. We are readers. We are thinkers. We create diamonds under pressure. Damn it, we are the pressure. We are the light. We are the intelligent. We are the unconfined grace. We are the words waiting to be written, waiting to become. We become words, paragraphs of clarity, the problem and the solution. We are the equation and the answer. Yes, 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 we read vigorously. We find ourselves in our stories in history books. We will not submit to your arrogance. We will not respond to your imaginary hatred you created for us. We will not believe in the slavery narrative as if we were never anything else. We are kings. We are kings, reclaiming our throne, marching towards our future and telling them that you are the impossible. You are what you waited for. We found ourselves through the hurt, the pain, the struggle, the change, and the attempt of our extermination. We will not be destroyed. We are here to stay. We created the stay that your land sits on. We are the Fredericks, the Martins, the Malcolms, the Garveys, the Langstons, the Du Bois, the Hueys. We will raise our sons to find our mysteries and volumes written for tomorrow. We will send the secrets of us pinned to the back of their necks. Their children will read about us. The black boys will report about us. You see, we will never die.
We are not monolithic.
We will never die. No matter your thoughts, your process to destroy us, we will live, we will soar, and we will become more than what you think we're supposed to be. We will make America great again, because this time we will go down in history for building it. We will do more than pray. We will wait and act and wait for the answers within ourselves and find hope for our future within ourselves. We will win. We will win. We will not lose this war this time. There's too much on the line. We will become our children's heroes, but this time we will be real. History will be honest, and we will remember every single detail about our history. We were not monolithic. We are not monolithic, and we have never been monolithic.
We are not monolithic.
Are you?
Our organization is called Research Institute for Social Equity. Our mission is to end mass incarceration in the United States as we see it today. Coming from Arkansas, I come from a very close-knit family. My father was a Baptist preacher, and my mother was a school teacher. They instilled great values in us. Had 5 brothers, 1 sister, and also a very close-knit community. I grew up in a segregated school until the 6th grade, so at 12 years old, I was integrated into a all-white school, moved away from our close-knit community and those teachers that cared and understood us as an individual and as a person and as a family. We were bused off to another community that happened to be an all-white community, and we were totally disrespected. We were abused, and also our humanness was always at stake. And the care and the concern that we received from our own African-American school, it just totally disappeared. I found myself getting into fights a lot, with white people or white children. The bus would pick us up, but it would not bring us back, so we had to walk these long distances through white neighborhoods, and they would stick their dogs on us, throw rocks at us, and so it was a traumatic experience making it from junior high school back home every day. I cannot deny that I don't still carry some resentments and some anger about what happened. But because of my mindfulness within myself and my approach and my connection to the universe and spirituality, I've learned how to manage it. Inner peace and self-love and self-reflection and stillness. It really resonated with me because that's what I needed, and that's who we are, and that is our culture that has been stolen and robbed away from us. Western psychology does not have a model that heals our community. We talk about multi-generational trauma. So there's going to be challenges for people that are re-entering society. You do need to get a job, you do need to have housing, you do need to reintegrate back into the community successfully. But it's difficult to do that when you have mental health issues from the trauma associated with criminal injustice. The cultural factors are not being considered when it comes to healing and treatment of particularly African American, Black and brown people. And they end up on the streets, they end up reoffending, they end up back in prison. If you look at the stats of what happens to returning citizens from jails or prisons, you would know that this system needs to be transformed. Over 10,000 individuals are being released from United States correctional facilities every week, and 73% return within 1 to 3 years. I've developed a program now for people that are returning from prison and jails. It's called the Mind Body Medicine Community Day Program. I'm very much adamant about looking at the cultural factors of groups before I go in, because I really want to get with them and speak their language and understand what their lived experiences are. So the first thing that happens when the group starts is that I come in with a ritual, begin to start opening up to receive the training. So I begin to tell my story. So I began to become kindred with the group. Then we began to break down in the groups, and we began to have those discussions like, who are you? Examining ourselves and checking with ourselves and checking with our neighbors that we are building this relationship with. Because the whole goal is by the time we leave that group, you have made a connection with a beautiful soul. And that connection will be always.
Sir Irvin Williams III was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri on September 19th. He is the proud son of Marcella Calvin and Irvin Williams Jr. He promptly announced to the world at the age of 15 that he would be an actor and hasn't been taken seriously since. Sir Irvin Williams majored in secondary education/English at Harris-Stowe State University. He is a certified English educator, grades 5th through 12th. As an educator, actor, playwright, director, producer, writer, poet, and activist, he understands his craft is not only limited to the classroom, but to the progression of the next generation. Odell Johnson, Ph.D., is a humanistic psychologist focused on social and criminal justice reform as it relates to communities of color. Dr. Johnson founded Institute for Education and Justice, formerly Research Institute for Social Equity, a 501c3 nonprofit organization to address the systemic racial disparities using research and culturally informed, innovative programming. Currently, Dr. Johnson is conducting research for San Francisco Department of Public Health with recently released Lifers on the impact of long-term incarceration has on the psychosocial aspect of reentry relating to community safety. He is a professor of community psychology at Pacific Oaks College in Pasadena, California, and a revisiting lecturer of various other colleges and universities surrounding criminal justice reform.
Well, good morning, Justice B family and our new family on Real STL News. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Johnson, Sir Irvin Williams, thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be a great show. I'm looking forward to it. All right, in segment one, we want to tackle the issue of law enforcement, African-American encounters with them, and the residue of trauma. And Dr. Johnson, I'd like to begin with you. And if you could give us a little bit of a perspective on your insights around, especially what's happening in today's climate around law enforcement, African-American encounters with them, and what the resulting impact is in terms of the long-term trauma for many of those encounters.
Yeah, sure. So good morning to everyone and everyone that's listening in the audience. Yeah, so the trauma, I've done extensive research around encounters with police. The research is also a lived experience as well. So being a Black man in America, I certainly have been in, I certainly have had many encounters with the police going back to my teenage years. So I definitely have the lived experience to understand that, and that really was the meta motivator for me to want to do research in this area around police racial profiling. So the Congress actually enacted a law back in 2012 that the racial profiling was against the law, only except if that law enforcement officer feel like there's a threat to community safety, they can profile, which really kind of skews the law because it really should just be cut and dry that it should not be allowed because our communities are the ones that actually are the communities that are more focused on. For example, in our community, in the nightlife, you often see police officers parked outside of nightclubs and night entertainment establishments in our community. Whereas when you go on the other side of town, you don't see that with people that don't look like us, particularly people that are of European descent. So the profiling still continues. They've just kind of modified it to make it still justifiable by saying that there's a threat possibly in the Black community when people are out in the night. But so this really has a long, immediate, acute effect on the psychosocial aspects of who we are as Black people. And it also has a long-term effect because we begin to internalize this fear. And that's what it really perpetuates is fear. And so we kind of hold that in. So it has to go somewhere. So we kind of, when got to so many encounters, and also what we witness on the news, television, and what we hear from our neighbors and friends about their experiences with law enforcement, we begin to internalize it, and then we begin to socialize it into our community, that this is normal activity, this is our norm. And so we basically just kind of live in a coping environment where we shouldn't have to cope with this. So coping, we are always at a high level of stress when it relates to police law enforcement. Now we have families in our community and individuals that are afraid to even call the police, particularly like they have kind of a situation of domestic abuse, but it's not really that bad, but it's kind of like possibly could elevate to where it could be violent. But they rather just not even call the police. We have parents that have sons that are that are kind of wayward or having some kind of behavior when we used to feel a little bit comfortable saying we're gonna call the police. But I said I'm not going to dare call the police because I'm afraid that you might lose your life on something really, really minor. So we are just really, in a broad stance, are just really, really impacted psychologically from police encounters of what we've heard, what we've seen, dating back to Mike Brown. Even I had to talk about myself. I mean, I was just recently, 3 years ago, I was driving down I was going to the museum of the Legacy Museum. Brian Stevenson opened up in Montgomery, and I flew from California to Memphis, Tennessee, rented a car because I wanted to see some family members down there. And in my drive, just immediately when I got on the highway, I was pulled over by police. He said I was weaving across a white line. That was a racial profiling. I'm sure that police officer probably would more or less, I think he was in the parking lot where I actually was pumping gas. And he said, there was a lot of construction going on. There was not even any lines that were visible due to the construction. And it was a really bad day because, when he read my license and all those types of things, and I said, well, I'm on my way to a major event. He actually said, well, will you mind getting out of the car? Get out of the car. And he said, you mind if I search your car? I said, well, why would you want to search my car? Well, it's this protocol. We just have a lot of trafficking going on in this area. And so I said, well, if I don't let you search my car, then what? He said, well, you would probably just call some other backup officers and tow your car in, and you got to go down to the station. Well, I knew that would throw my whole plan off for my journey of where I was going. And but I felt a little psychologically offended, and also I felt a little bit personally kind of raped in the sense of my manhood, my humanness, because these encounters are often occur in our community. And so because I have actually had that experience and over a lifespan, I was able to kind of to be able to pack it in the right kind of place. I didn't internalize it. I knew kind of know what I'm dealing with, and so I kind of abided by his instructions and moved on. But so this whole thing around police encounters and this really kind of a lot of racial violence as well that we are experiencing, it can be addressed. It should be addressed. And so there's long-term effects. There's been long-term effects even on me when I knew when it was happening to me, what it could have possibly turned out to be. And we always have to deal with that, in this color of our skin.
Okay. Sir Irwin, can you share, I'm sure you may have had some experiences. Would you like to share?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for inviting me to the show with this phenomenal guest. I really appreciate that. Absolutely. Like he was saying, this is a very shared experience with everyone, particularly if you African American and you male and you happen to be over 6 feet. I was 6'3", 250 pounds plus. So I actually purchased my first home in Hanley Hills when I was 18. And I worked 3 jobs, had 3 cars. I was never a drug dealer, never a gangbanger. And I used to have a police officer follow me from St. Charles Rock Road. People who are not from St. Louis, you won't understand this. But from St. Charles Rock Road to 170 to my home every night until we actually filed a police report. Until one day I just hopped out my car and my mother came to the door and I just lost it. I lost it. I was tired of being followed every night at 11:30 p.m. to being pulled over by being followed home by the police. And then fast forward about 2 years after that, my sister, it was when Mills Mall first opened. My sister came by my house and I stayed on Natural Bridge and Jenny Station Road by this time. And my sister came over my house and I told her I'm about to go to Family Dollars. I'm gonna pick up some toiletries. I'm gonna come back because we're gonna go to the new mall. It was the first day it opened. And I pulled up in front of my sister. My sister and her fiance at the time were sitting there and the police was pulled up on them and had them sitting on the curb. And I'm like, what's going on? I only left for 5 minutes. What's going on? Take a long story short, the police officer pulled my sister over because he said somebody called about a peace disturbance in an unfamiliar car sitting at our apartment complex. Now, I warn you, there was only one young lady who stayed in my apartment and myself. The young lady wasn't there. Fast forward, my other sister happened to just be coming around my house at the time because my sister was trying to figure out why was she being arrested. And my other sister just happened to be coming over with her 2 children because she stayed right around the corner from me, and they had a baby pit bull. The pit bull, the puppy wasn't on a leash, so the puppy ran through the gangway. Police pulled out a gun, pointed it at my sister, the dog, my niece, my nephew, with my sister in one hand, and everything went disarray. He slammed my sister's head on the not the hood of the car, but the roof of the car. My sister's 120 pounds, 5'3" at the most. This guy was about 6'2", 280 pounds. Surprisingly, it was a black officer. The white police officer was the one telling him, you tripping. Make a long story short, I told my sister, I called my mother at the time and told her to call our lawyer and get somebody over here. I started guiding my sister, my niece, my nephews into my apartment. The police officers, about 5 of them now, have pulled up on the scene, followed me into my apartment, kicked my door in, slammed me on the floor, and put a gun to my head and told me, nigga, if you blink, black will be the last thing you see. And I was arrested for peace disturbance. We filed and this is something I'm going to tell your audience, if they have to file a police report, if they have to file a claim against the police department, make sure you get it notarized because they cannot throw it away. It was Pine Line Police Department. I'm going to say exactly who it was. Make sure you get it notarized because they can't throw it away. When you go down to the federal office to file your official complaint, make sure you get that official complaint notarized because we went through all the process and our case was still tossed out. Come to find out a few months later, because I had to move out that space because I couldn't trust it anymore, because now police just driving down the alley by my house every day because we filed this complaint waiting on me to do something. The young lady who stayed in the apartment complex across the hall from me, this police officer was dating her. She was also 5'3", dark skinned, 120 pounds. He thought that my sister, who looks exactly like this girl from the back, was the girl he was actually talking to and assumed that she was cheating on him with another man. This is where all of this escalated, and we never got justice for that. We never got any compensation for that. And this happened in 2003. So, and I literally just realized this year that my mother could have lost all of her children and her grandchildren had it gone any other way. Had we not been the victims who found the space to be calm,
right,
in such a traumatic situation.
Mm-hmm. Right. And see, and this is what I'm talking about. When you have those encounters, it reshapes your whole perspective going forward.
Yes.
And the trauma that comes with it. And you guys gave some really brilliant examples of what we're talking about today. And I want to take a minute so we can cut away to a video that surfaced via Facebook over the summer involving a family of about 2 adults and about 4 or 5 children who were stopped by the police, and they thought it was a stolen van. And here are a few minutes of that particular encounter.
The Aurora Police Department now at the center of a new controversy. Officers putting a family in handcuffs, mistakenly thinking they were in a stolen car. They were not.
It is just the latest in a string of controversial decisions made by Aurora police officers.
Do we have sound?
And tonight, just as we hear from that horrified mother, in the last 5 minutes, we learn Aurora has named a new police chief.
Vanessa Wilson is the new chief. She's been working to address this incident along with the growing calls for changes in policy, transparency, and accountability.
Denver 7's Addie Guajardo joins us live tonight. Addie?
Well, Shannon, the Aurora city manager is recommending Vanessa Wilson. They're still having to make that final decision on the next interim police chief. He's addressed it today, saying that she has taken on head-on some big issues, including firing those officers who mocked the death of Elijah McClain. There has been a lot of backlash from that firing. We heard the Aurora Police Association called her unfit for the job, but today we're hearing a different story. Wilson has been with the Aurora Police Department 23 years. And today, just 30 minutes ago, I want to read this to you before we launch into our story today. She released a statement on behalf of the Aurora Police Department apologizing for a family that was wrongly targeted and held at gunpoint. We have that story.
There's kids.
It's these cries and screams Brittany Gilliam can't bring herself to relive.
That's terrifying. As a parent, that's
heartbreaking.
Gilliam says she was searching for an open nail salon while sitting in a parking lot on Bucklet and Iliff in Aurora.
And she's screaming like, hey, hey, auntie, the police.
When officers pulled up from behind.
They got their guns on us. They got their guns on us.
Gilliam was in the SUV with her 6-year-old daughter, 12-year-old sister, and 2 nieces, one 14, the other 17 years old. Police say a license plate reader alerted them the SUV was stolen.
You keep saying that a vehicle is stolen, but you haven't asked for a registration, a license, none of that.
Gilliam was detained and her sister and niece were handcuffed on the ground.
The whole point of you being a police officer is protect and serve for the people. You did not protect and serve. You put a gun on 4 kids.
It turns out the stolen vehicle was actually a motorcycle, not Gilliam's SUV. Both vehicles share the plate number, but they were from different states. Interim Police Chief Vanessa Wilson weighed in.
So the mistake is that the officer was going off of what dispatch told them that was confirmed. So he was acting in good faith that was confirmed.
2 officers apologized, but Gilliam says the damage is done.
I don't accept the apology. No, I don't want to hear that apology.
A traumatic situation, she says, changed her daughter's perception of police.
I hate cops. That's exactly what she said.
They're like guns drawn on kids.
Aurora police say it's part of their unwritten policy to pull a gun during a high-risk stop.
At what point was it high risk when you just barely pulled your gun out?
Gilliam is now calling for change.
Get a new damn policy.
Now, Good Morning America will also be having another story on Gilliam tomorrow morning if you want to tune in. As for the next police chief, we are hearing that they will effectively have that position once they are sworn in. So please continue to follow us on all of our platforms because we'll have that one vote once it's in. Reporting live in Aurora, Addie Guardo, Denver 7.
Thank you, Addie.
Okay. Who wants to unpack that? Look at the ages.
I'll start out. I mean, it's what we're seeing here. The pipeline of the prison has a lot of different portals and pathways. This is another one of those pipelines to prison. In regards to those youth that were laying on that ground, they're going to respond either one way or the other, fight or flight. And so the flight is that they're going to internalize the trauma, and it might show up later in their life based on what just happened. Are they going to take this situation and turn it differently for themselves? But if the home life and the parenting skills are not geared toward, helping those children understand what just happened, then those kids can end up being caught up in the criminal justice system and that pipeline to prison. And also have other psychological damaging effects to just who they are as human beings. Because that was not human what just happened. And when we got officers slamming women down on the ground, Black women, it's to the point of even murdering them with Sandra Bland, all this foul play that's going on in our communities, and kids are in that age of seeing that, and if it happen to be their parents that are being treated like that, anger begins to emerge. Anger, if it's not dealt with, it would deal with them in bad ways. So there's definitely implications that needs to be a mental health treatment approach for that kind of abuse that's happening in our communities, particularly with our children. So this is, to me, another way to the pipeline to, or either, the outcome could be much better, but there's a whole lot of the dynamics within that family nucleus and also support systems beyond that family that must be adhered to and considered.
Sir Irwin?
Yes, ma'am.
Your thoughts?
I think it's extremely upsetting when you see something like that. It's not shocking. It's upsetting because the justice system is doing exactly what it was meant to do, and that was to keep Black people as permanent citizens in this country. And when you see, I think what irritates me the most is the negligence of the police officer pulling over. It has the same license plate number. However, it's a different state. So the license plate number the license plate doesn't even look the same. That's number one. Number two, I am tired of Black people having to be in a position where it is life or death every single time we are pulled over by a police officer. They did not ask for registration of these children. And I work with children. I teach children. I've been teaching almost 15 years now. I teach children. And when you teach these babies, you understand they are babies. Why do you all have this little 5-year-old child laying on the ground next to her cousins and her siblings in handcuffs? And then you're going to issue an apology? I am tired of you. I'm tired of them apologizing for the exact same thing that they continuously do. If you're going to continuously apologize, not only do they need to, like you were saying earlier, you said this earlier about Black people normalizing what's going on. And this is a normal occurrence in our community, and it has to stop. Point blank, period. By any means necessary. I'm tired of Black people having to be docile and turn the other cheek and adhere, or teenagers being rebellious or flipping off at the mouth. That deserves them or causes them their life. And that's utterly ridiculous to me.
Right. So I want to shift a little bit and have Dr. Johnson speak a little bit about mindfulness. I had an opportunity to read several of your articles, look at some of the videos on your website, and what stuck out to me the most was this approach called mindfulness, and how it can be applied to those who have experienced trauma and what it looks like in its application. Can you give us some insight into that, Dr. Johnson? What is mindfulness?
So mindfulness it's an ancient old practice that stems from Kemet. Oftentimes, what we see now in our modern day society is that they talk about it kind of comes out of the Indian territory in India, rather, under the Buddhist kind of heading. But it's not. It goes much further than that. I mean, mindfulness really begins with us in the African diaspora. We are the originators of that process, and we just lost it along the way. To Egypt, which used to be Kemet, you'll see all the drawings on the wall, the art that demonstrates that mindfulness and yoga and all those things were practiced, as well as Ayurveda, which is the food, plant-based diets that Africans lived on. So mindfulness actually is our history, and it is a way that we use to heal ourselves, have visions, and understand our dreams, and also have this ability to create in the level that we created during that time. And also it's a healing method to whereby we are able to release toxicity and trauma in our biological systems. Mindfulness is a very useful process that in regards to dealing with trauma. So trauma, again, when we encounter trauma, particularly for Black people, and we must go back to history and really start from 1619. So if mindfulness was not used during that time of enslavement, our ancestors would not be able to survive those years. Even though it wasn't called mindfulness, but mindfulness was used. I mean, and mindfulness gave them the tactics and the ability to navigate through that process emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually, because abuse was beyond anything that has ever happened to any other social group in this world. And so I don't think any other group could have survived it. That's why it's so important that our community and our diaspora be understood, that we are not, what's happening now in Europeanism in regards to mindfulness and meditation. I don't teach it like that. When I teach mindfulness meditation to our community, I teach the historical context to it. I share and I talk them through. This is who you are, right? As they're going through whatever pose, whatever issues that they're dealing with, I find them where they are, and I lead them back to who they really are in their own humanness and their DNA. So, for example, mindfulness. So yoga exercise, for example. If it's a group of our church people that are in church, instead of using mantras around Buddhism, I would just say, okay, so let's just kind of like, let's go into this prayer pose. So it's a prayer pose. So they understand prayer pose in regards to this, and hands up in the sky, and we give it honors to our creator God, whomever you believe in. So I begin to modify and make it fit to our cultural experiences, so it's culturally congruent to where it's more effective. And people begin to say, that makes sense, and truly our creators want us to feel this way and be able to relieve these types of things. And also I have people to tap into that trauma that's been embedded inside themselves, a bit by bit. It's kind of like a crackling of trauma. So trauma is not relieved just in the instance of you go to a meditation class, I feel good, it's over. Consistent practice. And then you give this practice and this skill to our people and have them to take it home and let them design, how it fits into their daily life and activities, but make sure that they are practicing, because it's not really hard to practice it. It's not any kind of special technique, but if you understand the concept and from an educational standpoint of how it relates to you and who you are, then you'll be able to put it into places in your life and be able to deal with things, and then help you be able to deal and cope with it. I don't like the word coping, but help you to be able to process and successfully in your life. So this mindfulness brings an alert awareness to our people, if it's taught in a culturally congruent and environmental fashion, that it would be able to help people to relieve the stresses associated with trauma and any other things that's related to preventing them from achieving their goals and meeting their needs.
What about, can mindfulness be used to prepare the African American community for these encounters, to help them maintain the posture that you maintained when you got stopped? Can it be used in that regard? Not just post encounters, but to deal with the trauma, but ways to keep people centered and focused on the goal at hand in terms of leaving that encounter with your life. Can it be used in that regards?
Very much so. In a preventive manner, mindfulness can definitely be used in that way. There's many forms of what mindfulness is. We got transcendental meditation, we got guided meditation, we got body scan meditation, we got so many different forms of meditation. We got movement meditation, we got sound meditation. So it's just so mindfulness can be used as a preventive tool to whereby when that encounter happens to an individual, when police arrive. Because again, I talked about a little bit about the fight and flight, but as soon as the lights go on behind us, we look through the rearview mirror, our whole biological systems change. Right. Skin temperature rise, our eyes get bucked, we get nervous, and our hearts start beating fast. Mm-hmm. You have to feel that way. If it's just a traffic ticket, we can pay that, but we should have to feel that way, and that begins to make us sick. So our bodies begin to respond, and it start, the bodies start kind of misfiring inside, different organs and everything are all kind of contrite and tied up. So, so if we understand, because in the preventative standpoint, that we have mindfulness, we can start that meditation of mindfulness right when we see those lights go off. Mm-hmm. And so just take a deep breath and breathe in slowly and breathe out. And tell yourself in that affirming ways that this is going to be okay, and we're going to get through this. But it's just to let it just kind of ride, and then it could possibly be an escalation, or you could possibly say some things that's going to upset that officer, or feel that you are not being respectful of his authority, and the next thing you know, it could turn into something else.
Now that seems like it's a good approach for adults. What about children? What would you recommend for children?
Well, children, kind of a different. So mindfulness definitely work with children. I work with children, teaching mindfulness so a child pretty much about 6 or 7 years old begin to comprehend mindfulness a little bit better than a child that's 4. So I recommend that a child you can start mindfulness with a child at 3, but you just it's a whole different kind of kiddie kind of mindfulness that you got to play with. It's got to be more game, like the games that they like to play in coloring books and sand play and things of that nature. But the ones that are 6 years old and beyond, these kids can comprehend and practice mindfulness and really find a place of peace and silence and alert awareness. And alert awareness is very important, an important tool that mindfulness brings. So it can benefit children to be able to, because now we have police officers that are in the school system, particularly in our schools.
Yeah.
kids are being handcuffed. If they have a bad day and get into some kind of a confrontation with their fellow students, and these cops don't mind putting the handcuffs on them, right? Calling their parents, they don't take them to jail, but the whole idea of them putting the handcuffs on begin to send a signal, a message that you're in jail. Because kids know, they see it on television. There's enough examples about what handcuffs mean. So that also begins to turn and become internalized by that child. And oftentimes in these particular schools, the parents come up and they're screaming and hollering at the teacher, the principal, whoever, that they got these handcuffs on. And the kid, and the parent begins to be really belligerent about the fact. And that tells us that even when that child goes home, there's not going to be a mindfulness discussion around. It's going to be an angry discussion, and that kids are going to know how to process that. So therefore, there needs to be reinforcement in the school around mindfulness when our kids have these accounts, so they are prepared to deal with it more effectively.
Right. Okay. So Erwin, playwright, director, producer. Let's talk about responses from a theatrical and artistic perspective. What are some suggestions or thoughts that you may have on ways to address trauma through theater and arts?
That's an excellent question. Well, one thing I'm thankful for is God made me an artist, and it took a while for me to realize that. When you are an artist, you sit with things and you internalize. I was talking to you the other day about how we either tell about the past, we put a mirror to the present, or we project the future, and that's what artists do. We put everything in a gamut. So what I do is I sit with things, I internalize it, and I release it. That's always been my mindfulness, and that has always been my process of dealing with things. And I'm thankful because it allowed me to release a great deal of things through my art. And as an artist, particularly as an artist and as an African-American artist, I have a particular interest in telling the stories of Black people in an authentic way that not only do we understand, but we can process our trauma, because we're taught to digest our trauma. We're taught not to tell our business outside of the house. We're taught to keep these secrets, and these secrets are eating us up, and it manifests in different ways. It manifests in cancers, it manifests in diabetes, it manifests in all of these different ways, and mental illnesses. And we have to find a way to release it. So one thing, and I tell people this, and it's the only person I can use that would give a frame of reference to people, but the most brilliant thing about Shakespeare was that he was able to tell the queen and the emperor that they're naked, and they not know that they're naked. So as a writer, I have to be able to express to some of us that we're dealing with trauma, and put that mirror in front of us, because sometimes we don't even know we have issues until we see it projected in somebody else. And so I am very concise when I write, because I know I am exhuming bodies from the grave, and I am telling these spiritual stories. Art, theater, film, that's spiritual work. People don't understand that is light work. Anytime a character come and visit me and start, and I'm about to speak crazy writer talk right now to your audience for the people who don't understand. These characters come in, they visit us, they sit with us, they walk around and say, tell my story. I heard Denzel Washington say this before. He said the example of hell, and you're an artist, a performing artist, and a visual artist, is when you die, every person's story that you were supposed to tell and you did not, come to your bedside and say, why didn't you speak for us? And so I have to make sure that I am speaking for people always say I'm tired of hearing slave stories. I want to hear every slave story there is to tell. I want to hear every Egyptian story, every Kemet story. I want to hear every Black story there is to tell, because they deserve the right to be told. Just because we don't agree with it, or we may not agree with the lifestyle of it, doesn't mean that their lives aren't deserving to be told.
Both of you all have said a mouthful. I mean, listen, and one of the reasons, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, I know years ago I was told I have to speak life to people's situations. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons, well, the reason why I do the show. Mm-hmm. We have to put this in a sphere where people can see it. We're not going to bury it. We need to talk about it, unpack it, and move our folks to a place of healing. We don't need to be walking around anymore with all of this trauma and unspoken grief, we have to deal with it. And I like that. I like that.
Can I say something to that?
Sure.
What you just said, it's also us who can recognize the trauma in ourselves. We have to be mindful on how we point it out in others, because sometimes it comes off as being judgmental, and you don't want to be that. But it's like when you're educated, you have to come down to the student's level and bring them up. And you know what Dr. Martin Luther King said, I'm not calling you out, I'm calling you up. So we want to call people up in a way that feels good to the soul, and not have them revert back to the same person judging them and saying something's wrong with them. Because Black people don't need to be fixed, we need to be healed, and that's the difference.
Yes, yes.
That's right. And I like to answer that. That's really good. I mean, you're so on point in what you were saying. You know, and this trauma, and also Black people also pass their trauma to their neighbor, right? Yes. You know, so we pass it on because we love our fear and things of that nature. And we begin to talk those fearful things into their lives as well. For example, I mean, I lived in Ferguson, Missouri prior to moving to California, and right over Washington Avenue, and that was like the middle class Black community for Ferguson. I'm sure you know what that is. And so when I first moved in that neighborhood, my neighbors were telling me, hey, whatever you do up there around the corner on that block, police be parked behind that bush, right? And so when you get to that point, slow down, right? Why should we have white people in their community tell their neighbors when they move in, hey, when you get up there on that corner to the left, police are parked behind a bush. You know, it's okay if they park behind a bush. I mean, I don't know if it should be parked behind a bush. Maybe they should park in front of the bush so we can see them. So we know to follow that rule anyway, as opposed to, why are you hiding? And so then I understand why Ferguson blew up the way it blew up. I didn't realize until things that broke out with Mike Brown. I was in California at the time, that it began to resonate with me that it was probably many bushes in Ferguson that police hid behind.
Right.
And many masks that they wore, you know, that I didn't even see because, you know, again, I'm living in the part of Ferguson that it's not on the edge going towards St. Louis. And it was a kind of a different, you know, social class there. Mm-hmm. And so we would go from that to right to the freeway to the, you know, to handle our business, to the church or to the grocery store and back home again, not down Florissant Boulevard where all these other things happen. Right. So we have the tendency, though, to pass that trauma on to others. And that's something that I think of, you know, collectively as a group of us, a community, we need to stop doing that. And we need to pass on positivity, you know, because we are getting the help and the things that we need through a mindfulness approach, to where, you know, we can say something different about that police on the car. I don't believe in defunding the police so much. I do believe in readjusting and sending resources to other fashions in regards to law enforcement. But definitely, I think that trauma does pass along. We pass it along to others.
Right. You know, I want to say something before we move into our Q&A segment about defunding. And I spoke a little bit about this on last week, because I think the narrative that has been attached to defunding is so filled with so much misinformation. Mm-hmm. Defunding doesn't mean abolishing and doing away with the police. It is the act of reallocation of resources and dollars to a more balanced distribution of funds, yes, so that you can have a more appropriate community response, so that when people need to call for assistance because their family member or loved one is having a mental health episode, they're not calling the police for that intervention, but maybe mental health practitioners. So initially when defunding came about at the height of the protest, it really got hijacked. And people began saying it means, oh, we don't want police. That's not what that is. And every time I hear it, I must bring clarification, mm-hmm, because it's a reallocation of resources and dollars to a more equally distributed manner, so that dollars can be more focused on services in the community, having the right approach in response to certain situations. Okay. And that's more so for our listening audience, because I know my guests are very hip to that. Okay. But I want to make sure our listening audience really understands and stop spreading this misinformation about defunding. Okay.
And also with that defunding project, I'm sorry to jump in, but I just had to say this. It's two things I wanted to clarify with that as well, because when we talk about defunding the police officers, I always tell people, everybody has having an issue with defunding police officers, but nobody says anything when they're defunding our educational programs and our education system, because they do that to us every single year. That's one. Even when the Ferguson incident that you were speaking about earlier, my mother literally stays on Lucas and Hunt in West Florissant. That's where she stays. And I was telling everybody this during Ferguson. Mike Brown's story, right to your point, Dr. Johnson, Mike Brown's story became a huge story because it was so close to the economic system in Ferguson that was too close for comfort. Mike Brown has happened on North Side St. Louis. He has happened on West Side St. Louis. And matter of fact, a person had got shot right now. Remember the mentally ill guy who got shot on Riverview right after Mike Brown. It wasn't a huge story, but it got so close to that different tax bracket home. That's why it became a global phenomenon, a phenomenal story of Ferguson. And we have to change the narrative, because sometimes it seems to me as African Americans, we feel that, not we as a collective, but some of us feel that certain Black people's lives are more important than other Black people's lives. And that narrative of exceptional Black people are exceptional, period. I can go anywhere and talk about exceptional Black people, but it's when we have the know-it-all, not the know-it-all, the knowledge that this life is more important than this one. We have to change that in the Black community, because every life is important. And I don't care if you make $1 or $1 million, every life is important.
Right. All right. So at this point, we're going to introduce our Q&A segment. Bobby, do we have any questions coming in?
Yes, we do have one question right here.
Okay.
Wakil would like to know, how do we contact Dr. Odell Johnson?
Well, yes, so you can reach me at odell@risejustice.org. That would be my website, and also my email address is odelljohnsonphd@gmail.com.
You want to repeat that again?
Okay, so that's odell@rise, R-I-S-E, justice.org, or you can reach me at odelljohnsonphd@gmail.com.
Thank you very much for your question.
There was one earlier that I saw. They were asking if Odell Johnson was still in St. Louis.
No, Odell Johnson used to be in St. Louis. You know, when I lived in St. Louis, I was a community advocate all up and down Florissant Street and down in St. Louis. You know, working with substance use and, you know, criminal justice reform and social justice reform, and also youth, really youth mentorship in some of the toughest schools there in St. Louis. So, but I'm no longer there, but I still have a lot of ties there, and I'm so glad that Ellie Lane, you know, invited me to this to be on this platform, and it's just really good to reconnect. The energy is really, really, really great to be here. But I'm always just reach out to me through my email address, and we can talk.
Great, thank you for the question.
As of right now, I'm not seeing any more questions.
Okay. All right, if some should come in, let me know. We'll move into allowing Sir Erwin Williams and Dr. Johnson to kind of give us some updates on any upcoming events, books, anything that's happening that you may want the listening audience to know. And we'll begin with Sir Erwin Williams.
Yes, I always, when I get that question, I always go, okay, let me go into my mental Rolodex, because as an artist who has undiagnosed ADHD, I have 1,000 plates spinning at the same time. But what I've been doing for the last 2 years is writing down, making a calendar and going in order and finishing things. So that's what I'm doing right now. I just wrapped up season 2 of It's Complicated. We're in post right now. It's Complicated is a web series about 4 African-American males, 10, 15 years out of college. Each one of them is based in dramatic irony. So each one of them have a secret that they're holding from each other. Everybody knows, the audience knows exactly what's going on, and you get to see these 4 African-American male stories unfold. And it's called It's Complicated. We just wrapped up season 2 of that. We're post for that. And right now, I'm planning on releasing my first book of poetry intertwined with an autobiography. It's entitled Mr. Duplicity. I know people are going to say, why would you name your book Mr. Duplicity? Because I love the poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar, We Wear the Mask That Grins and Lies, Hides Our Cheeks and Shades Our Eyes. He talks about how Black people have to wake up every single morning and put this mask on and be something for the world that they can't be for themselves. So I named my book Mr. Duplicity because I understood that as Black people, we have to be something different depending on who we're dealing with all the time. And when that happens, some of us lose our identity and forget who we were at the core. So that's why you see people spiraling out of control, because they honestly don't know who they are. And what really motivated me to finish my book, because as an English educator, I want to have books from Black boys about Black boys. And I'm gonna tell this story because I don't want to go into all the other stuff that I'm doing, because that stuff is on back burner to next year. But when you're an English educator, they have this thing called NK, National Certification of Teachers of Education Conference, every year. Tens of thousands of white English educators. At the most, it's probably 100 males. So we're like unicorns in the educational system. And what happens is when you get into these rooms, they talk about great works of literature, and they talk about, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird or Shakespeare's Othello. You don't get to identify as a Black boy from a Black boy perspective. Yes, there are Black people in these books, but they're either the victim or they are the villain. They're never the protagonist in the book. Like even when you read, so we have to constantly, I have to tell my white female counterparts who are English educators that the reason you love Hill Harper's To Kill a Mockingbird so much is because the white girl is the protagonist. She's the hero of the story. How do you feed the hero of the story to a Black boy? So I'm in the process of right now writing my first novel called With Torn Bleeding Hearts We Smile, about Black boys and the transition from high school to college and to the world, and how does that look, and starting a line of novels for Black boys about Black boys.
Okay, great. Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, very good, very good. This is good work, Sir Irvin.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that the arts are, we talk about mindfulness, and what you're doing is I mean, I've used techniques around art therapy, and it has really made a huge difference in my practice. And so it makes a big difference in what you're doing, in the communities, particularly if it's culturally focused. So I am in the process of transitioning back to the South. I'm going. My hometown is Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. So I'm going to be moving my organization, nonprofit organization down there, which is Institute for Education and Justice. It's kind of like a platform of educating so young people that are aspiring to be psychologists and sociologists and other social science that they want to go into, social work. And it's going to be a platform for them to learn and do internship on. I'm going to also be conducting research by us, right? So we have so many people coming in our community, poking and picking, collecting data and taking it back and putting it in their cocoon, in their fashion. But the data is often skewed because they don't ask the right questions. When I go out looking for research, the articles that I want to even quote or use as a citation in my writings, and I have to question, like, what is the authenticity of what you're saying? Because I don't see, that's not my lived experience, what you're saying, that how we're living, as Black people in our community. So often they come in and they want to collect data on how many of our children that are failing, how many that are succeeding, how many of our adults that are employed, how many are not, how many are housed, how many are unhoused, and all these different things. And this is the data they use to make their own profiteering system works. It doesn't trickle back to us. It doesn't help us. The program sometimes kind of put us in a position of dependency, and also which makes our desire to evolve. It just kind of diminishes a lot. So a lot of these things can be traps that when they collect these data and they put the data back out, and then there's a program that might be started from that, but that program doesn't have the effectiveness to really move anything in our communities. But for one prime example, the criminal justice system, last time when I checked in 2010, it was 2.3 million people in prison. And when I checked just yesterday, it was 2.3 million people in prison. However, there's been over $100 billion that's been spent in the last 10 years toward, and I mean yearly, towards reform. So I'm working on a book called The New Cash Cow, Criminal Justice Reform.
Right.
Out there, we got a lot of people that are pimping our pain, through these nonprofits that are getting millions of dollars to come in and bring programming, and they don't understand our DNA. And so when we have individuals that go into these programs, the minute they violate a couple of rules, they're kicked back out, right? So they can get that bad feeling, and then they'll begin to take those numbers and say, we saw 1,200 people last year. Well, you were kicked out half of them, so you can get to that number of 1,200 people. So they're paper pimps. So by programming, when they do their reports, it's pretty much, okay, we saw these many people, but how many people did you house? How many people did you get employed? How many people did you heal? How many people that are sustainable and moving on and being a positive contributor to the community? So those numbers don't fall in any kind of category. So that's what the research that we need, and I really know what's really the core issues and how are people evolving. If they're not involved, if it's broken, we need to look at ways how we can fix that. But if we don't look at that, then it's going to be whole. So I'm coming to the South. I'm hoping that my organization will be able to be scaled in St. Louis, because St. Louis is really a passion of my heart as well. So I've done so much work there, and I have people there that are calling me back. So I said at best I can probably scale up into St. Louis. You're only 7 hours away from Arkansas, from Little Rock. And so I'm also working on some other books, Black Pain of Black Males, and Black Pain of the Trans. That's more of a historical context. It's also a part of my memoir. So I'm going to actually put me on the pages of this pain, which is a little bit different. It's supposed to just being a story of just kind of historical context. It'll also be my history as well, and how I see it from my lens. So that's going to be really, really interesting. Also, communication, working on a story that's cross-culturally of how we have to have this conversation effectively, with our oppressors. I'm just not seeing any of, this Black Lives Matter, great Black Lives Matter. But I'm not seeing the conversation being really effectively, having an effective conversation is really making a difference. A lot of people, if you ask a lot of Black folks, we really don't know, what Black Lives Matter agenda is from one day to the next. That's just me, right? You all might feel different about that. But there's a lot of misinformation about who they are and what their intentions are and what they're trying to do. And also, I'd like to see more of that, whatever benefits that they're bringing to our community, being, kind of exposed to our community. I'd like to see it trickle down.
Right.
And see people, really benefiting from what they're doing. So that's kind of the work that I'm doing.
Yeah,
that's
amazing. Because yeah. And that's a good point. We need to be able to move from just talk and rhetoric to being able to put the information and resources in the community that people can put their hands on and make use of, and be able to help change what is happening with our people. We're so stuck in the talking that we need to be able to populate this space with some tangible resources that people can use and really bring effective change to the community. And not just community, but individual lives. Lives.
I'm sorry.
So we're going to have to wrap up shortly, but both of you all have to allow me to do a book discussion, a live read when your books come out. I definitely want to make sure we get this information in the hands of our listening and viewership audience. Okay. All right. So let me ask you. We're going to do our behind the scenes stuff later. But I want to give you an opportunity to maybe leave one major nugget with the audience before we go. So Erwin, and you got 30 seconds.
Jess, I guess what I want to wrap this up with is, I have this saying, it's in blurb of my book. It says, if you believe you will survive, you will. Simple as that. And you have to put that at the forefront. Black people, we have been surviving our entire lives. We are more than willing and more than purposeful that we start to live. We have to start living in all of our brilliance and not just surviving.
Okay. Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, I just like to really just kind of talk about the African proverb of Ubuntu. You know, Ubuntu is that we are because you are. I because you exist, and without you, I cannot survive. We really need this to really be embedded in our psyche, you know, collectively throughout our community. Because if we come together as a community, we can change this whole narrative.
Listen,
of the week. You know, again, we are people that spend $1.3 trillion, you know, per year. Imagine if we actually acted like our ancestors did in the boycott in Montgomery on the bus system. They actually walked to work for 13 months. Imagine if we don't go to the store, shop at the stores for 13 months, how that would impact the society. A lot of people depend on us. We have all these foreigners in our community with these stores that are there just to cause harm, take our money, sell us products that are not low quality, and drugs, and you know, with the alcoholism and the other kind of things that brings into our community. Our kids are going to these stores to buy bubble gum, watching elderly people buy alcohol, and that begins to be kind of embedded in their psyche, and they grow up curious about what this alcohol is about because these people really like that stuff.
Right.
So, and I know in St. Louis, that was one of my initiatives. I was going around all those stores, throughout St. Louis, saying, "Why are you here? Are you contributing to this community? If not, you need to. We just started an educational fund. You need to pay to be here, but not get the community to move on that. Right. To sign the petition and we're going to boycott you because if you're going to show up and take millions of dollars, there's a little place down on Florissant called, I think it's John's Chinese whatever. I'm sure John takes out $2.1 million a year out of that little bitty poverty-stricken community. And we don't even realize that. I checked it. That was back in 2010. Imagine how many others are in our community taking out millions of dollars.
Well, they got them on almost every corner here, okay?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm thinking of is like, how do we change the mindset of our people about even patronizing them?
I don't know. Because when I walk into a store and see a barrier of a bulletproof glass, that's and a barrier between me, I'm thinking like, I'm not coming in here to rob you.
Right.
So that doesn't make me feel good to spend money with someone to have that barrier. And also, you don't even have restroom facilities that you would allow me to use in case I need to use the restroom. Mm-hmm. But in white communities, I have all access to that.
Right.
And then we should, and so that's mistreatment of us, and we should not no longer tolerate it. That's policy initiative.
That's right. All right. Bobby, did we have any other questions come in?
So one person actually had 3 questions, but I'm not sure if we can answer all 3 at once.
Okay.
We're already over time.
Right. So let's do one. Pick.
Let me pull it back up here a second.
Pick one that might be beneficial to the whole.
Let's try this one. So this comes from someone. This comes from Need Prince Power. They ask, if you are with someone and they committed a crime, why are you considered an accomplice to that crime?
Okay, we'll come back and answer that. That's a legally based question, and we're going to answer that question with the resource that I have on the show. Okay, we'll come back to that. What's the next question?
What makes officers different when they can commit a crime and have the other officers watch or participate in that crime?
Uh-oh.
That's an excellent question.
Bobby, we're already over time. Okay, so
we can go really deep with that.
Yeah, so let's try to at least give a thoughtful response and could at least give this questioner a direction to move forward in, okay? In understanding that.
Okay.
Dr. Johnson?
Well, so basically what we have here is a system that was built around, when we talk about police, we have to go back to the days of after 1865 of the ones that were given a badge to go, slave catchers,
Mm-hmm.
Slave catchers were also during enslavement period, but after 1865, we have those ones that, the laws, the Jim Crow laws begin to change. So what ended up happening was a lot of these policemen. So the policemen of yesterday are the policemen of today, in many ways, psychologically. And so not all policemen are bad. I don't want to say that, but there's this white supremacy mindset that cops that do wrong, when they actually, we had talked about, we was going to talk about this duality of police in regards to what shows up on the job, when they they turn into something different when they put the uniform and the badge on. Yep. And the answer to that is no. They are who they are, and they come on with this preconceived notion that we are less than we are 3/5 human. We are not human beings, and we are a menace to society. And but we can't also take away from the trauma that they also carry too. That they have picked up from their ancestry about being racist. Black people are going to rebel one day, get power, and come back and kill us all for all the things we've done to them. Imagine, say if you always have your looking behind your back of that retaliation. Whenever you do, always looking over your shoulder for retaliation. The white policeman officers really carry that attitude in many cases, thinking what they're trying to do is save whiteness. So the attack on saving whiteness is brutalizing blackness. So when we get them to change that mindset, and the only way that's going to happen, to be able to go from a racist to a non-racist, it takes practice. It doesn't happen with a diversity and inclusion training program, like so many people are doing, and corporations are doing. It's a waste of time. These folks got to make a decision, on once they realize, the value of our humanness, and then be trained and train themselves and be able to accept the fact that this stuff is instilled in them so deeply in 400 years. It's intrinsically, and it's intrinsic and it's transcendence from their ancestors into them. And there's a large segment of people. We see the people that follow the Trump, that feel that their lives are in danger because blacks may rise up and take over their communities or move into the communities. So this is something that is just kind of like just embedded in their psyche, and so need to have training of how to practice on getting that out.
All right, thank you, Dr. Johnson, and thank you for the question.
Or copy has to hit practice to nail the nail in every time. So it's really that needs to happen with it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to end with that question. Bobby, the additional questions that we may have, make sure we capture those and send them to me as well, please. Okay, thank you so much, Justice Beat listening audience, as well as our Real STL News family. We appreciate you joining us today. We trust that you walked away with some additional insights and perspectives, especially about the need to address trauma and the concept around mindfulness, as well as are looking into the response of using theater and arts to address trauma as well. We really could have done this show for another hour. There are some things that I didn't even get a chance to ask, but I think that we focus on the more important aspects, and that is what's happening to our people, the African-American community, and the residue of trauma in their interactions with law enforcement. I definitely will be doing an additional segment to this at some point in the future, and I would love to have the two of you come back so that we can really delve deeper into this issue. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back next Saturday. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Justice Beat. If you like what you heard and found the information useful, Then support the Justice Beat radio show by spreading the word and telling a friend.